What's up, y'all? It's your girl Tatiana, aka The Quiet Storm, and we are speaking our minds to transform lives right here in the ATL. And I'm here with my co-host.
Yours truly, Savon the Don, and you have just tuned into Transparent. We keep it real, raw, radical, and transparent, baby. I said, can you dig it? I said, can you dig it? What's up? It's yours truly, Savon the Don.
And Tatiana, aka The Quiet Storm.
And today's topic is the downsides of gender socialization. So let's get into the topic, but as always, let's start out the show with a transparent moment. Yes. So, Tatiana.
So today's transparent moment is, who is the king of R&B and who is the queen? So I'm going to go ahead and say my king of R&B would be Tank with his fine ass. And queen of R&B, I would say Aaliyah. But Brandy is a tight second. So, Savon, what say you?
My king of R&B would definitely have to be Usher, because Usher been in the game a long time. So, he got a track record.
Okay. I can deal with Usher.
And then for queen, I would have to say, well, can I say Beyonce or is she pop?
I wouldn't say Beyonce. She kind of touches some different areas, so I wouldn't say she's the queen of R&B.
Because she's not strictly R&B?
Right.
Okay, well, if I can't say Beyonce, because she's not strictly R&B.
She is kind of popish.
Okay, so I guess I'll go with Aaliyah.
Okay.
So, even though she's no longer with us, rest in peace.
Yes, rest in peace.
But other than that, when we're talking about the downsides of gender socialization, basically we're hitting at basically the pitfalls, like where society likes to highlight certain things about gender socialization, or how they want to socialize particular genders within society, and what is considered gender appropriate for that gender and what is not, and what they want to say is important to hit on for that gender and what is not. So basically, I know for men, a lot of the time men are put into this man box. And if you step outside this man box, it's kind of almost like building men up to be almost like robots. And if you veer from masculinity, in this sense, toxic masculinity, the only appropriate emotion being you can show is anger, aggression, roughness, being at the expense of women, being misogynistic, being disgusting in some regards with hygiene, and you can't cry, because if you cry, if anything that a man does, if you cry, anything like that, if you're raped and you want to seek justice on it, it's not taken seriously. If you are beaten by your wife, it's not taken seriously, because it's like, you're a man, how can you let this happen to you, this, that, and the third. But these are very serious issues, and these are things that men don't want to come forth, and these are things because people shame men of not coming forth about these things, that put a dent in our society, and thus more so perpetuates patriarchy and in a sense perpetuates misogyny.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know, as a woman, I do enjoy my socialization. There's not very many aspects of my socialization that I do not enjoy, because I just really enjoy being a woman. So, but I would say some of the downsides that I have recognized is that, for example, I feel like as a woman, our intelligence is challenged more. so that people assume that I don't know certain things, or people assume that I have a certain level of intelligence, a certain level of education, without actually knowing. And so that's a downside, because you constantly are in this mode of having to prove yourself, especially when you enter into a new setting, with new people. So that will be a downside. I think also another thing I've recognized is my voice is not heard as much. It is not uncommon for me to be in a conversation with usually a man, but it rarely happens with other women. But usually with men, if I'm in a conversation, it is very common for them to interrupt me, to cut me off, and just carry on whatever conversation they have in mind. And so I think as a woman, sometimes we are socialized to not really have much of a voice. Or if we do have a voice, our voice can't be louder. And I'm using that term louder metaphorically. Our voice cannot be louder than the men that we're surrounded by. So, there are some aspects of socialization for women that really suck, to be honest. And I think, too, we're socialized to see ourselves as victims in some senses. Although, being a victim can be a very real thing in certain situations. But I think in general, we are socialized to have this victim mentality, and that works against us because we end up spending more time, feeding our weaknesses than we do empowering ourselves. So, that's another thing that I've noticed. And I don't know, people just expect us to be these weak, voiceless beings, when really, in many situations, we're the exact opposite of that. We're very strong. We have, a mind of our own, and we have, a lot to add to whatever conversation that we're in. But like I said, by and large, I actually do enjoy my socialization, but I still recognize the areas that suck.
Right. I mean, we're not saying that we dislike our socializations, but we just want to hit on the errors within society that have a downfall within gender socialization. And furthermore, when we talk about the downsides of gender socialization and the perspectives of when a person is a transgender person, and how this translates over to people of trans experience versus people of a cisgender experience. For instance, you have this one instance where this young man who is a trans man, and in southern Georgia right now, and he is currently locked up for killing his rapist. So in instances like that, because men aren't taken seriously when they are raped, and then especially when it is intersected with transgenderness and homosexuality, what happens in an instance like that? This is not to say that the individual was gay. He was not gay. But the person who raped him that was engaging in a homosexual act. And so with that, because he is trans, and because transgender issues, queer issues, aren't really taken seriously in society, and then on top of that, sometimes people don't know how to handle a situation like that, which is no excuse for the situation, because a human life is a human life. To be thrown in jail with no trial, and then to be drugged up, and to sign a plea deal from manslaughter to involuntary manslaughter is wrong in itself, and is an injustice in itself. And being that this individual, Kai Peterson, has not seen justice, this this is an outrage, because what is that to say about other trans men down the line? And furthermore, more of a reason why you have a lot of trans men who are stealth. Not to say that there is fear, but there's a role to say that trans people travel a very thin line between their safety and being who they truly are and living in their truth throughout society. And this is something that needs to be talked about more, because in order to break down these barriers, first we need to talk about it, and then not only do we need to talk about it, we need to find solutions to these problems and then implement them into society.
So my question is, do you feel that we are socialized differently based on whether we are cisgender or transgender, as far as our gender expression goes? Do you feel that sometimes trans people are socialized to a stricter standard of upholding certain gender expressions, or do you feel that it's pretty well balanced between cisgender and trans?
It's not balanced at all. There's no balance between the socialization of a cisgender individual and a transgender individual, and especially since, for instance, when a cisgender male is shot and killed, automatically there is an outrage. The black community is on gun ho, like, you killed a black man, how cisgender black man, how dare you? And this, that, and the. If something happens to a trans black man, it's typically swept up under the rug, and typically nobody knows about it. Nobody's really talking about it.
I guess there is that. I guess I was thinking more along the lines of, for example, I feel that trans women are held to a high standard of femininity, where in some ways, especially if you're a black trans woman, you really do have to be like a bad bitch. Like, hair on point, nails on point, makeup on point, body bad, like everything. And I feel like we are held to a higher standard of femininity when it comes to socialization. And so not saying that cisgender women don't undergo some of those same pressures to conform to femininity, because they do, but I feel like for trans women, the standard is a bit higher, because I guess in people's minds, or, it seems like the attitude is, well, if you really want to be seen as a woman, then you have to try 3 times as hard as any cisgender woman. So good luck, and so I don't know. I mean, do you think it's the same for men of trans experience as far as them being held to a higher standard of masculinity, or,
No, I really don't feel like there is that same standard, because with manhood, period, the first thing is respect. Mm-hmm. When you go into when you going into manhood and you're brought up in manhood, it's all about respect and your masculinity. So the more masculine, and then on top of that, masculinity, your manhood is constantly always being attacked. Anytime you show any ounce of femininity or anything that could be perceived as femininity, your manhood is being attacked. So that pretty much, if you go outside the standard of being a masculine man, a heterosexual man, your manhood is going to be attacked.
So you're saying the standards for masculinity are the same for trans and cisgender men?
Pretty much. Yep, pretty much. But the thing is, I feel like with trans men, because there's, quote unquote, there's no rules to how to be a trans man, that's kind of like the ticket to being like, well, I'm going to be the best man that I can be, or I'm going to be the man that I want myself to be. And I'm not going to conform to these toxic ways of masculinity that cisgendered men do.
So why do you feel there's no rules? Because I can definitely identify rules for trans women.
Because there's no rules because honestly, a lot of trans men don't want to. I feel like on a lot of different levels, trans men are trying to change the face of masculinity in a sense, because masculinity right now is seen in a very toxic, very unsafe, very angry, aggressive way, and to the point where femininity is a threat to masculinity.
It has been for a while.
Right. So with that, it's like with trans men, it's like, okay, we're not gonna go for this bullshit, because it's like trans men see that's toxic, we're not having it, so we're gonna do our own thing. If you don't like it, oh well, fuck off.
So why do you think that trans women have somewhat of an opposite attitude in that they do want to conform to standards of femininity?
I think it has a lot to do with toxic femininity, and not realizing the toxicity within femininity, and then also cisgender women failing to realize the toxicity within femininity, and how that perpetuates patriarchy and their own misogyny.
Now, I will say, I guess, kind of shifting the focus here a bit off of trans and cis and putting it onto race, I think that I've noticed, I feel that certain gender socializations differ between black and white individuals, so that I feel that maybe, for example, I feel like black men sometimes are socialized in a different type of masculinity than white men are.
A lot of times it's due to the fact that you have a lot of black men who are insecure. You have a lot of it has to do with trauma. A lot of it has to do with ancestral trauma. And a lot of it has to do with us collectively as a community not healing from that ancestral trauma. And being that same component is not there for white people, they, in a sense, tend to be more free. Like how the saying goes, free, white, and 21. They are very free in a lot of things that they do and how they express themselves. Because even in, we're just going to put it on like an example for like in LGBT terms. The black LGBT is not going to be the same as the white LGBT or just LGBT, because the black LGBT, you have all these different labels within each section of the LGBT, with lesbians, gays, and trans. And with lesbians and gays in the white LGBT, they don't have that many labels. Either you're butch or you're femme. But lesbians is like you stud, STEM, no label, femme, like, oh my gosh. There's like so many things that go within to the black LGBT that is not in the white LGBT, and that typically has to, it all boils back down to gender socialization and, intersectionality with race, and a lot of this all breaks down into like different compartments, because you have first your black, first you have your race, then you have your gender that you're assigned at birth, then you have the gender that you actually identify as, and then you have the subcategories like your sexual orientation that play a role within that. So there's a lot of factors, there's a lot of intersectionalities, there's a lot of things that play a role within that.
And I do want to say, I think that what our focus should be in the day and time that we live in is really making space for everybody, no matter what their gender expression is, because there are some people who are gender conforming, and I think, and they do conform to their socialization, and I think in some ways that has been criticized, because the hot topic now is queerness and that type of thing. And that's wonderful. But I think, we need to make space for everyone, because it's okay to be gender conforming as long as you're not imposing that on someone else. And it's okay to be gender queer as long as you're not imposing that on someone else. And so I think, honestly, the challenge is making space for everyone, because I'll say for myself, I'm a very gender conforming person. I do not consider myself to be gender queer in any sense. But at the same time, I don't have an issue with people who are gender queer, because that's who they are, and they are living that authentically. And so that's just my input on that.
Right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being gender conforming, but this is where it lies the issue, that there's a lot of people that are gender conforming, and that because there's a lot of people that are gender conforming and don't see the toxicity within some of the things that they may do, and then they force that onto people who may not be gender conforming. That's where lies the issue, because then when they push back, it seems like, oh, they're attacking or they're bullying or this, that, and the third, when really they're just being who they are. And so really it's more so like a tit for tat and like a pushback of going back and forth. When I do agree with what you said, there really just needs to be a space where everybody can just be how they want to be. If you want to be gender conforming, be gender conforming. If you don't want to be gender, you want to be gender not conforming, be gender not conforming. If you want to conform to the binary, conform to the binary. If you don't want to conform to the binary, don't conform to the binary. And nobody should force someone to conform or not to conform. Everybody should be their self in the most authentic way that they can possibly be, to be the best version of themselves that they can possibly be living their truth to the best of their ability.
Well, I guess on that note, I have nothing further to add. So
please like, comment, and share. We hope you enjoyed this segment on Transparent, and we hope you tune in next time.
Yes, everyone have a good night. Smooches. Mwah.